Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel Supply Chain Way. So on this video, we are going to discuss about the different business models within e-commerce. Now, if you look at e-commerce, I think it is definitely around 15 years, last 15 years where it really picked up, and I'm talking specific to India as well. So if you really look at it, one of the concerns on e-commerce, specifically from a learning standpoint, even when I first interacted with e-commerce industry, the acronyms and jargons used are very specific to e-commerce, and that makes it a little bit look complex. But in reality, it is so simple. So what I would try and do in this video is um, use some workflow diagrams and explain you some of the key business models within e-commerce. So without not much delay, let's get it started. So the first business model what we talked about, which is called the inventory based or stock based a business model. So as the name suggests, inventory based, so that means the e-commerce player holds inventory at their own warehouses. Okay, so I think that's what is called inventory based and stock based warehouses. So let's see who are all the different stakeholders involved. So there are three stakeholders involved. First one is the customer. The second one is a fulfillment center, which is nothing but the e-commerce organization and their fulfillment center, which could be their own warehouse or it could be a leased out warehouse. That means they leased a warehouse, but the goods stored there is basically the e-commerce organization is the custody. So from a flow standpoint, let's keep the fulfillment center as one of the key stakeholders since it is an inventory based business model. The third one is the supplier. Okay, so now I want to call out few things over here. Customer is a customer, so there is no confusion here. But fulfillment center, that is a new word, which is nothing but a warehouse, right? You all know what is a warehouse, where the goods are stored. In e-commerce, predominantly they use that as a fulfillment center. In retail, typically they call it as a distribution center because the products are coming in and then it get distributed to the customer. Okay, so these are the different terms used, but for an e-commerce I would recommend to use the word as fulfillment center, and in short form people call it as FC. This is what you hear most of the time, which is nothing but a warehouse where the goods are stored. And the third stakeholder is a supplier, the supplier of the goods which gets into the fulfillment center. Now this supplier um, can be a person who buys the product from a manufacturer and sells it in the e-commerce portal, or to the e-commerce organization, or it could be a manufacturer, but from a term standpoint we call that stakeholder as a supplier. Okay, a very specific example, if you go into Amazon or Flipkart, you will be seeing lot of products looks very similar. They may come from the same manufacturer, but the sellers are different. Okay, so we are calling those sellers as a supplier. But you also see in same Flipkart and Amazon, there could be manufacturers directly selling their products as well. Okay, just to keep things easier, we are calling both of them as suppliers. So from these stakeholders, let's see how the business model works. So it all starts with the e-commerce organization doing the inventory planning. Since it is an inventory based business model and the e-commerce organization is the one who's going to hold the stock, or at their books as well, it is very important they do the inventory planning and they would be releasing the purchase order to the supplier. Okay, and so the purchase order would be issued to the supplier. The supplier would then invoice against that purchase order, send those products to the fulfillment center. Now there are some very key takeaways here. For example, here the purchase order is issued by the e-commerce player to the supplier. So on the purchase order, if you see, the issuer is going to be the e-commerce player and the receiver is the supplier of the goods. And on the invoice, the supplier is a seller. So the supplier's name and their address and all the taxes related information will be available. And the buyer would be the e-commerce organization. And this is a sale transaction. um, very important, right? For example, this is a sale which is happening between a supplier and the e-commerce organization. Okay, And then now the product's ownership moved from the seller to the e-commerce organization, and it is stored within that fulfillment center. And now the customer would then places an order. So a customer's order means it's nothing but a customer's purchase order. Okay, so when you place an order on the a mobile app or on your laptop, it is nothing but a purchase order which goes to the e-commerce organization in the right term, which is nothing but the sales order for the e-commerce organization. But if you look at from the customer angle, it is customer's purchase order. Both are one and the same. Okay, now basis that sales order, the e-commerce player would invoice the customer and send the product, and that would reach the customer. Now this is a second transaction of sale. It's very, very important, because in the second business model I'll explain you the difference. As I've told you, it was in the books of the e-commerce organization over here, and now once the customer places an order, that product is now getting fulfilled, and that means it is going to reach the customer. Now there are two different logistics are available here. The first part is what we call it as a first mile delivery over here, and that is a products moving from seller to the fulfillment center. And that last mile delivery is a last logistics movement where the product is going towards the customer. The reason why I'm telling is, again, I don't want to complex it much. Some cases between the fulfillment center to the customer, there could be multiple movements. Think about the northern side of the country and the southern side of the country. Assume the order is placed by a customer who is in the southern side of the country, but the product is on a fulfillment center which is in the north. It could travel to a different fulfillment center which is closer by, or a transit hub, and then it can reach the customer. Technically, you can call the last logistics movement which is going towards the customer, you can call it as a last mile delivery. This clearly explains the inventory based business model on an for e-commerce industry. Now, key takeaways: there are two sale transactions, from the seller to the e-commerce organization, and then from the e-commerce organization to the customer. Now, when Flipkart started, predominantly they worked on an inventory based model which worked on their favor. Why? When e-commerce came in, one of the USP, the selling point, is faster deliveries to the customer. And not many sellers are very much well versed with this portals and everything. So what happened? The same seller will sell to multiple people, and they won't maintain their inventory positions well. So what happened? You get the order from the customer, and then you realize the product is not available with a seller. So that is the main reason what the e-commerce players started doing is buy the stuff and keep it with them. And so you no need to worry about the inventory availability. So always moment the customer comes in, all you need to do is a last mile delivery. So you can do faster deliveries, and inventory availability is it's not a concern. You know it is on your system. But the biggest disadvantage is you are owning an inventory. So that means, take a very specific example. Assume that that e-commerce organization is selling water bottles. There are 10 different colors. They need to hold stock for all the 10 different colors. And no matter how good you do a forecasting and planning, what if there are 5 colors which didn't sell at all? You need to write that off. So basically, the inventory is on your books. Any amount of forecasting errors will have a huge impact on the e-commerce organization. That is the disadvantage with the inventory based business model. Now let's get on to the second one. In case of the second one, this is called as a dropship business model. I'll just show you the variations. As you can see here, as we transition to dropship model, first and foremost thing, the fulfillment center is out from the picture, because in a dropship, still the order is placed by the customer, but it gets into the portal of the e-commerce organization, and they will channel it directly to the supplier. As you can see here, the order is directly channeled to the supplier. That means all that e-commerce organization does is have a portal, get in all the orders, and then distribute it to the right supplier, right? And what happens? The supplier, based on that order, will directly invoice and send that product to the customer. Again, the invoicing and everything will be reflecting on the e-commerce organization's portal, but the key difference is on the invoice you won't have the e-commerce organization's information and address. It will be the seller, the supplier's address, his taxation numbers and everything, because the sale is between the supplier and the customer. So the e-commerce organization, what they do is just provide the portal. You act as a bridge between the supplier and the customer. That's all. So as you can see here, the inventory planning obviously will be done by the supplier, because the e-commerce organization is not going to hold any stock, right? Now, the biggest problem with this business model is you rely completely on the fulfillment on your supplier, and things like same day delivery or next day delivery is quite a challenge if the supplier is not very closer to the customer. Second, inventory availability would be a concern, because the same suppliers could definitely work with multiple e-commerce players. But this is one of the biggest bottleneck with this business model. But as you know, the positive is the e-commerce player is completely without any inventory, because all they do is take the order, give it to the supplier, and they are going to ship it directly to the customer, as the name said, drop ship. Okay, now these are the pros and cons. Now, the third model, fulfillment by the e-commerce player themselves. This is nothing but the pros of both the business models of inventory based business model and the dropship model are joined together in this business model. So as you can see here, so here there's a fulfillment center, and inventory planning is done by the e-commerce organization, same like the first one, the one what we have seen in the inventory based. But the biggest change here, as you can see here on the step number 2, post the planning is done, okay, still the e-commerce player will have a complete data in terms of what is selling well. All these analytics are available with the e-commerce player. They provide this analytics and make it available for the supplier, and now the supplier has to create those delivery order and send the products to the fulfillment center. So what that means, if I am the supplier or a seller, okay, if I am the seller and I look at all this analytics provided by the e-commerce player, and I will send my products to the fulfillment center of the e-commerce player. That's why it is not a sale, it is a delivery order, wherein still the seller holds the ownership of the it is in the books of the seller, and they hold the ownership of the product, but it is physically available on the fulfillment center of the e-commerce player. How clever, isn't it? Yeah. So now, after the sale is completed, that means moment the sales order is coming in, that is from the customer, they placed an order, the fulfillment from the fulfillment center, the product reaches the customer, and the e-commerce player is going to invoice it on behalf of the seller or the supplier, right? Because the e-commerce player's name won't be visible on the probably the logos will be there, but legally the transaction is still between the seller and the customer. Now, what they do, post that invoicing, once the payment of the customer has also come in, they deduct their charges and then they issue the credit back to the supplier. Okay, so this is how this transaction happens. This is a very smart way of merging the pros of the inventory based business model and the dropship business model. So to give you some examples, fulfillment by Amazon, FBA, one of the like a hot selling cake in US as well as in UK and other countries as well as in India. So wherein again the sellers hold their stock at Amazon, and then Amazon will do the fulfillment once they receive the order from the customer. And same case, fulfillment by Flipkart. Okay, so every e-commerce player now have this way of not owning the stock but having a custody of the stock, because it won't be on their P&L, but then they will fulfill it when the order comes in, and it works like a charm for them. Why? Even there, if a product doesn't sell beyond a point of time, the e-commerce player will charge an fee of long-term storage to the sellers or the supplier. I'm using the word interchangeably, okay, supplier or a seller, however you want to call it. So they found out the different ways of monetizing, but still have the benefit of not owning any of those stocks. So the same example we talked about, they can hold 10 colors of bottles at the fulfillment center, only 5 sold off. The rest of the 5, if it has been long term storage, that is beyond say 6 months, then there is a fee which is collected as a storage fee from the supplier itself. So it works definitely in favor of the e-commerce player, and this also ensured the customer service is also taken care of, because since the product is already on the fulfillment center, there is no worry in terms of inventory availability, and also directly the last mile can be taken care of. Okay, so these are the three key business models within e-commerce. Now let's go to the fourth one, which is called an omni-channel. Now, as you can see here, this setup what you're seeing here is absolutely the same. We are talking about an online commerce, which is an e-commerce, right? Now, um, so this is basically, there is no change on whatever you are seeing here. Again, here as well, order comes in from the customer, and it is invoiced and sent to the customer from the fulfillment center, and then you see the again the transaction between the e-commerce player and the supplier. Now moment we say omni-channel, it is not specifically focusing on this operation. What an omni-channel says is, now to a customer you are giving variety of options to buy a product. So placing an order to a portal, an e-commerce portal, and then getting delivery of a product, which is what you're seeing here. The same organization, in addition to an e-commerce portal, they also have a retail store wherein you can walk in and then you can look at the products, buy the products and go. So they have a physical brick and mortar store as well. So there are two different channels. So moment an organization have more than one way or one method of uh, servicing the customers, then that becomes an omni-channel. A very good example which immediately comes to my mind is Lenskart. I can go to Lenskart website, I can just place an order, I can get a delivery, or I can walk into my nearest Lenskart store, which is just few kilometers away from my place. I can just go in, check everything, and I can place an order there itself and take the product. There is another alternate option. I can go to a Lenskart store, I can try, and I can also place an order online. So Lenskart is giving me multiple channels through which I can see and buy the product. Then that becomes an omni channel. Now there is a catch here. Many projects when we work on, the organization will call themselves as an omni channel, but in reality it won't. I'll tell you which are all the instances we cannot call it as an omni channel. For example, omni channel means these channels should gel well as a single unit. um, to be very specific, assume e-commerce is a separate vertical, they hold a separate team, they hold separate stock, they hold a separate systems, and everything is separate, and then the brick and mortar side is completely different team, different system. That means these two verticals are not gelling together a single unit. Then you cannot ideally call that as an omni channel. You know why? In omni-channel there are so many benefits. When you have a centralized inventory, a centralized team, the only the channel of reaching customer is different. Only when all comes together as a single unit, then you actually get the benefit of a omni-channel. Otherwise you call yourself as an omni-channel, but you're not going to reap any of those benefits. So many projects we drive where I engage on, we go out and look at those single channels and then try to make them gel as a single unit. A heavily complex project, but any organization which nails an um, omni-channel, that is and in a very seamless way, they can reap the benefits of it. Okay, I think with that, I'll also going to quickly call out some of the different omni channels over here. There is a big list, like starting with Bopis, which is buy online, pick up in store. We have Boris, which is buy online, return in store, ship to store, curbside pickup, reserve online, try in store, try and buy, endless aisle, order in store, ship to home, and click and collect, same like Bopis, subscription services, same day delivery services, and this list keeps going on. Now, since this is on the business model, I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining everything. Probably a few things I'll explain. Each one is a different channel of reaching to the customer. Okay, as I've told you, as an omni channel. But if specifically if you're interested in anything, please put down on the comment which omni channel type you want more explanation. Just put your question along with which city and country you're watching this video. Just put your details there and put your question. I would be glad to help you with an additional video or give the response on the comment itself. Okay, so I'll pick up the first one: buy online and pick up in store. So what is the variation? You get into a website, place the order, but you can walk into the store and you can pick up the product. That is Bopis. I'll probably pick up one more. Try and buy, which I explained with Lenskart. You can physically go to a store. Um, Check the product what you like, and there could be a customer service rep with a tab. There itself they take an order on your behalf with your mobile number and your account details, and they can place an order on your behalf which can come directly to your home itself. Okay, and which is not just try and buy, which also is the order in store and ship to home, right? So these are all the different omni channels which are available. Again, key takeaway: if it is an omni channel, doesn't matter how many different ways you're reaching the customer and selling the product, all those channels should work seamlessly as a single unit. That's about the omni channel. The next what we have is white label and private label. I was just thinking whether to get this added or not, but in e-commerce, because it's not very specific to e-commerce, but then I decided let's have it added because more and more even the e-commerce organization itself is getting into white label and private labeling on some of the top selling categories. Okay, so if you look at the overall business model standpoint or the workflow diagram, it looks very similar. Okay, so I'm not going to spend more time on it, but the variation comes in on the manufacturing side of it. So when you say it is a white label, it is a standardized product sold to multiple brands, and if it's a private label, it is a customized product sold exclusively to one brand. So I'll give you an example. Just open Amazon or Flipkart and just search for a product, water bottles. If you look at that, you may see, if you scroll down, there may be a bottle which is same colors are available, same design, the cap is the same, everything looks the same, but probably the branding would be different. The logos which is mentioned there is different. That is a clear example for white label, because it could be a same manufacturer who's manufacturing and selling that product to multiple brands, and that brands the or as a seller they put that product into an e-commerce portal and they are selling it, which is nothing but an white label. So it doesn't matter whether they're selling it in e-commerce or on a retail store, but the catch here is, if it's a white label, the product is manufactured by a manufacturer and sold without any exclusivity to multiple brands. But in case of a private label, it is a customized product sold exclusively to one brand. Like for example, I decided to say make a water bottle which is a completely a customized water bottle with my own design. The zipper is different. It has different holding option. It's something. It's my own design, right? Now I go to a manufacturer and tell them this is my design and you need to manufacture this for me, and there is a contract. So what that means is that manufacturer cannot use my design without my permission and sell it to anyone else, right? So it is guarded by that contract. The last one we have. So now the key business models are over, but there is also a variation when you talk about a business model. I'm going to quickly touch base and end this video. So if you also look at the e-commerce business models, if you look at from a seller and a buyer angle, it is not again talking about a business model, who's holding inventory, nothing like that. That variation we already talked about. Here we are telling seller and a buyer. Now base is that what are all the variations, right? First one, the seller is also a business, buyer is also a business. Then it becomes a B2B a very easiest example, in Amazon you can have a business account, probably a limited liability company or a private limited company can create a business account with Amazon and procure all their stationery from Amazon. So Amazon is also a business, a registered business. The buyer is also a registered business. So the transaction is between a business to business, that we call it as a B2B. And business to consumer, B2C, it's the most the common one, because the same Amazon or a Flipkart, me as a customer, I go in, I don't have a business, I'm an individual person. I can place an order giving my information and address and get the products from the business, which is nothing but the Amazon and Flipkart. Then it becomes a B2C. Now, the third one we have is C2C, consumer to consumer. Here, a very classic example is real estate. For example, I own a home or I own a product. I want to sell it off. I am a consumer, but I want to dispose some of the things what I own. I go to a portal who act as a bridge where I put all my products which I want to sell, or I put my home which I want to sell, and there is another consumer who comes in, looks at it. He wants that product or the home, and he buys it from me. That becomes a C2C business model, because it's from a consumer who's a seller, and buyer is also a consumer. The next one what you have is C2B. You may be surprised how a consumer can sell to a business. The good example would be all the freelancing portals what you have available, right? They're also the transaction happens digitally. It's still called as an e-commerce, but there the businesses come to the portal, hire those individual freelancers, and then get their services. And there are two more things which I will touch base as well. Direct to customer means, um, it's again, it could be a B2C, but the catch here is you chop off all the middlemen, and basically you manufacture something or you produce something, if you're getting talking about an agri industry, and then you take that directly to the consumer, right? Then you can call that business also and D2C. That could be an overlap. For example, that business could be a B2C and D2C. The last one we have is business to consumer, which is nothing but a business um, uh, purchases from another business, and then they in turn sell it to a consumer. Then we call it as a B2B2C. Okay, so this is a quick touch base on the different e-commerce business models based on seller and buyer. As I've told you, the omni channel what I talked about, then the seller and buyer relationships what I talked about, and the private and white label, it is not only specific to e-commerce. It is also applies definitely for other industries as well. Okay, so with that, we have come to the end of this session. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you have any questions, please feel free to comment down. And if you want any relevant topics to what you have seen here, you can also message me on the comment section. I would be glad to add those to the pipeline. Thank you. Take care, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.